It's time to talk hoops, college hoops, Mark. March Madness. It's March.
It's right around the corner, Greg. March Madness. We got to love it, along with all the Kentucky Derby. Big races on tap now from now to the Kentucky Derby, the run to the Roses, college basketball, March Madness. It couldn't be a better time of the year.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, no question about it. NFL draft and NFL free agency is also going to take up a lot of time here on the channel. But March Madness, it's officially March, and the madness really has already begun because you have college basketball tournaments taking place right now. So there's already teams that have been eliminated for the rest of the year, and other teams that are still dreaming about maybe making. That's what I love about these tournaments whether they're small ones or big ones, is that they give you this like last chance. You get the mulligan at the end of the season for a college basketball conference tournament championship, and whoever can just get hot for a few games can earn their way into the big dance. That's it's always fun.
What's nice, Greg, it's like lottery balls. There's going to be a team or two that maybe perhaps isn't arguably deserving to be in the NCAA tournament, but they catch fire at the right time in their conference tournament. And lo and behold, we've got one of those famous 14, 15, 16 seeds that make the tournament. And all of a sudden, their season is made.
Yeah, and look, on the smaller conferences, they're not going to do much. That's not the point. But with the bigger conferences, you never know. We've seen it before. They get on a roll. And I mean, NC State, of course, very famous for one of those types of rolls. You get on a roll, you win a conference championship. Maybe nobody thought you would, or maybe you were on the bubble, and then you can make that run. So that's sort of like, I think what really solidifies that trend, if you want to call it, and stat, is the fact that when you look at the first four. Now, I don't remember if it continued last year, but that's always like a huge trend that you always have to look at, is that like one of those teams that barely gets into the tournament in those first four games seems to find a way to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. A team that invariably, one of those four teams that win those four games is going to win the next game also.
Yes, yes.
It's the momentum factor. It just keeps rolling and rolling. So that's a nice handicapping tool, especially when you got some other additives to look at that. But so the first four also adds an extra handicapping edge, if you will, to March Madness in total. And I look forward to those first four games as well.
All right, so what we're going to do is just run through these tournaments. Most of the ones have not begun. I think one might have that we're going to discuss, or a couple. But most of them, because we'll be on the air next week at this time, and all of them will have begun. But next week, we'll also update the conference tournaments and let you know, and just continue in the process of letting you know who we think might be some good plays to carry through, because you have the key thing is not just the single games, but most importantly, the odds to win the conference tournaments. Like, for instance, the one that I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, is the WCC already began their tournament?
The West Coast Conference?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, they're going to begin on March 2nd. So, yes.
Oh, okay. Today. There you go.
So they begin today, yes.
So, right there, I don't know if by the time we post this, if it'll be underway or not, but right there, I would put a little bit of money on both Santa Clara and Marymount, because if you look at their conference odds to win the tournament, Clara's 30-1, Marymount is 50-1, and Clara's won 7 straight. They lost to Gonzaga by 5 at home. They lost to St. Mary's at 3 at home. Swept BYU, beat Marymount, beat Boise from the Mountain West, beat Cal from the Pac-12, and Marymount beat Gonzaga on the road and also beat St. Mary's at home in overtime. So for 30 and 50-1, why not? I mean, why not put a couple of bucks on both of those teams and hope one of them makes the championship game And then who knows? You could even hedge the bet if they're winning at halftime or something. Who knows?
Well, that's Loyola Marymount had that nice run, as you said, this basketball season. They were really, really good as underdogs this year. And in fact, as dogs of 4 or fewer points, they were in that role 5 times. They won all 5 games straight up. So as small dogs like Loyola Marymount just kept ringing the register. And they have the ability to do that just the same in this tournament. Now, they're not going to be small dogs to Gonzaga or St. Mary's, but they could dog up in a small way in the first 2 rounds of this tournament, which would get them to either St. Mary's or Gonzaga. So I'm with you. I think Loyola Marymount is deserving of a big 30-1 money line price.
Okay. Also, I tell you what, out of the A10, I'm getting a little bit of a feeling there about maybe George Mason. Maybe they can make a run. They had the big win the other night at Dayton. They've won 5 straight. They close out the season at Richmond on Saturday. But no matter what happens in that one, this is a team with a veteran lineup. They had some big wins last year. They kind of fell down the stretch, but they had a rookie first-year coach who's now in his second year. Like I said, the veteran lineup seemed to be peaking at the right time. They know they have to win to get to the tournament. I don't know what their odds are yet. I haven't seen them, so I don't even know if the A10 odds are up. I'm sure they're up somewhere, but they've got to be, considering you have VCU and Dayton and St. Louis and teams like that. I got to believe you could probably get, I don't know, maybe 7-10-1, maybe on George Mason.
Well, you probably can. A nice basketball team that was in the mix, 16 wins this basketball season here. I think they finished a little bit above the middle of the pack, which makes them certainly a basketball team that you want to entertain those thoughts in doing something just like that. There's another team inside here that I think is worth a look.
Okay.
Might not be as long of a dog as they are, but they're not a household name, if you will. And that's going to be Duquesne, the Dukes.
Duquesne, okay. So they're going to be what, 15-1?
Well, 15 or 20-1. And here's a 20-win basketball team that, if you go back last year and you look, they lost 16 conference games in a row to end the season last year. And they come back with 20 wins this season here. A whole new mental approach for this Duquesne basketball program here. And I know they've been stone rotten in this tournament. They're only 2-12 the last 14 games in the tournament with only 3-point spread covers. But that was yesterday, and yesterday's gone. I would make Duquesne, I would look long and hard at them to make a run in this tournament as well.
Yeah, let's see. The Dukes, they have put together a pretty decent stretch run. Let's see. They were at, since the beginning of February, they've won 6 out of 8. So
what do you want?
Yeah. So they've got a nice little stretch going there. And, again, they're a long shot for a reason. But the A10 is just not where it was, even in previous years. So even though you say VCU up there again, don't look at it like the old VCU, like power, mid-major power VCU. That's just not the case. Or even Dayton. They're nowhere near as good as they were a few years ago, but they're strong enough to be at top of this particular conference, but they're vulnerable. So, oh, by the way, and I'm looking here, Duquesne beat Virginia Commonwealth in their only matchup this year.
Nice. They won't be intimidated. Right.
No, so that's a good one right there. So Duquesne and George Mason out of the A10. All right, now we like to talk about the Big 12. Why not? It's the best conference in college basketball. And West Virginia is a team that you're pretty high on as far as a sleeper. Another team to keep an eye on as a sleeper is Texas Tech. Now, Tech's got a little bit more work to do than West Virginia, just a little bit as far as trying to get in. But in the last 7 games for Texas Tech, they've won 5 games, beating Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas, and road games at West Virginia and at Oklahoma. And again, that West Virginia road game was a huge game for both of those teams. And the only losses during that stretch, 1 point at home against TCU, 4 points at Kansas. So Texas Tech is playing some really good basketball right now, and a team just like West Virginia that knows West Virginia might be able to get in without winning, but I think Texas Tech, I don't know, at least if they get to the championship game, they may have a shot, but they may have to win it all too, because Oklahoma State has fallen apart over the past several games, and that opens things up for both West Virginia and the Red Raiders.
Well, Texas Tech is going to have to win games here, Greg. You know that. They have 16 wins going into the tournament. If they were to win and play in the title game, that would be 4 games, and that would be 20, and that would probably do it. I don't know if they would have to play 4 in the Big 12. I'm not quite sure. But if it's 3, it's 19. If they make it to the title game, I think that's deserving enough, especially for this conference being what it is. The other team I got to tip my hat to, and I'm not going to say that this is going to be a surprise money line long price, because it's not. But I'm just going to tip of the hat for a job well done this basketball season. Has to be the job that Kansas State did this basketball season coming into this year here. You take a look at this team. They were picked to finish last in the Big 12 conference at the beginning of the season. Last. They finished second in the conference. And what really impressed me is if you look at their quad 1 games this year, they picked up 9 wins. Only Kansas had more inside the Big 12 conference. And better than that, when they went up against 833 or better opponents, and those are Class A opponents, they did it 5 times. They won all 5 of those basketball games and didn't lose to the spread in any contest here. So the bigger the bear, the harder they fall, and that's what Kansas State's all about. So I would put them on my watch list and play on them as a dog in this tournament, because they're going to give you everything they've got.
I wonder, I would probably say that, let's see, there'll be a dog against Kansas, of course.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, maybe it'd be interesting to see who would be the dog between Texas and Kansas State. That would be interesting.
I think Texas would probably favor up to them just a little bit, just on name and reputation, if you will.
Yeah.
That and the fact if they'd have taken TCU out earlier this week, I would say for sure they would have. Now they slipped a little bit here, but so they've got a chance to be dogged 2 times in this tournament due to the Wildcats at Kansas State. So I think it's just noteworthy. And remember that when you go into the March Madness tournament as well, how well they played against good quality teams. They could end up being one of those quasi-sleeper type teams that all of a sudden, where did they come from? Kansas State, but that's the kind of season they've had this year.
Yeah, and Baylor is another team that probably would be favored over Kansas State by, again, name recognition, winning a championship, and all that kind of stuff. So look, what's going to be hard to do, and this is going to be the thing with the Big 12 is that when you take a look at the bracket in a couple of weeks, obviously they're going to be spread all over the place. Yeah, it's going to depend on who their matchups are, no question, and who gets the break and who doesn't. But you just know that you just got to pick which of the 2, say, teams are going to make the run. Because 1 or 2 of them will make a run because it's such a talented conference this season. And all 5 or 6 of those teams are so almost equal. Yes, Kansas at the top, but they're, again, just like we said before with the A-10, even though Kansas is at the top, this is not the Kansas from a couple of years ago.
No, it's not.
They're vulnerable. And even Baylor, they're vulnerable. So it could be Kansas State that makes the run instead of Baylor and Kansas this year. It could be another team that we're not talking about in that conference.
Well, let me give you this nugget on Baylor here. The last 7 times they played in this conference tournament, they've only won 1 game.
Wow.
1 and 6 straight up and against the spread, Baylor, in their last 7 Big 12 conference tournament games. And that win was the year they went on and won the whole thing.
Okay.
Obviously. But that's including that win. 1 and 6 straight up and against the spread their last 7 conference tournament games. A lot of name and reputation for Baylor here, and I'll be looking to fade them in this tournament.
In the Mountain West, now this is really going to be a good tournament because you have 4 or 5 teams that feel like they are tournament teams. And even though chances are, you think San Diego State and Nevada are probably in, I would believe from what I can see. The question is Boise in? They had a big win over San Diego State. Are they in? Who knows? It's possible. What about Utah State? It's possible. New Mexico's kind of on the outs, even though they were a top 25 team about a month ago. Things have not gone very well for New Mexico over the past month after getting off to like an undefeated start. I forget, what were they, like 14-0, and now they're 21-9. So they've only won what, 2 out of their last 7-8 games. So New Mexico's the team that has enough talent to win the conference tournament. That definitely needs they might need to win the thing. I'm not even sure if they get to the championship game, that's good enough.
Well, if they get to the championship game, that would mean they'd have 25 wins in the season. It probably should be good enough. They're a mid-major. Obviously, they're not, coming from what we call the quasi-Power 5 conference, but it would still be maybe arguably good enough. The thing that I think is a key in handicapping this conference is you got to look for the teams that know how to win games away from home this year. And there's only 2 teams in this conference that had winning records away from home. That was San Diego State, obviously, 8-2, and the other was Utah State, a 23-win basketball team. So, and there's so many teams that are clumped up right near the top here, Greg. You've got 4 teams with 22 or 23 wins in this conference here. So it's sort of a crapshoot, if you will. I know San Diego State's the number 1 seed. They're going to be the team that is going to carry the price here, obviously. So we're going to look to maybe try and find something other than San Diego State, the obvious here, and something like that.
That's why New Mexico is a good one, and I think Utah State may not get the recognition because they're not the type of program that is used to being in this spot compared to those other ones. So,
and they're playing good basketball right now. They've won 4 in a row as we're speaking here right now. They could be a look because you're going to get a bit of a price with them.
And they need to win games too, just like New Mexico.
Yes, they do.
New Mexico, they've beaten San Diego State this year. They beat St. Mary's on the road this year. And they've got that Mashburn kid, the son of Jamal. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think, in my mind, the Mountain West should get 4 teams in. The question is with everything else going on and always given the big conferences, 7, 8 teams and 6 teams there, are they going to get the recognition? And that's why the teams like New Mexico and Utah State, they're the ones that really need to probably do more damage in the tournament than some of the other teams I mentioned.
The big question is going to be how many teams are going to come out of this conference that are going to get an invite into the big dance. Yeah. Obviously, the winner's an automatic. The question is, will the number 2 team be there? Probably. But beyond 2 teams, it might be a stretch. It might really be a stretch.
That's what I'm saying. That's why, look, I don't think there's any way Nevada and San Diego State can't get in my mind. So if that's the case, that's why I'm saying with New Mexico, what happens if they do go on that run? And then what do you do with Boise? What if it's Boise and New Mexico in the championship game? Well,
adios, San Diego State.
I hope they give the Mountain West a little credit. I really do, because I think they deserve to get 3 or 4 teams in this year. All right, Pac-12. You think Arizona State's in after their win at Arizona?
Do I think they're in?
That was a dramatic win. To win against their arch rivals, a team that is highly ranked like Arizona, beat them at the buzzer, that was huge. So question is that enough?
Well, 20 wins, knocked off Arizona, UCLA, the 2 best teams in the conference here. They're going to probably have to make it to at least the semifinals of this tournament to do just that. But it's still a Pac-12 conference, which is, again, the Power 5 conference, if you will. And there should be at least 4 teams from this conference, and they'll probably be those 4 teams that are all entering the tournament with 20 or more wins, the 2 Arizonas, Southern Cal, and UCLA. I think those are the 4 teams we're going to see coming out of the Pac-12.
Yeah, Utah, if they make a run, that could be interesting to see if they get to the championship game, if that's good enough. And then, like you said, if Arizona State at least wins a game. In the Big East, I think the obvious team to keep an eye on now is Villanova. Because it looks like you have Marquette, Xavier, Providence, Creighton, Connecticut. 5 definites. Other than that, I don't think you have anybody else unless you make a run and maybe win the championship game. And I think right there it's Villanova, because Villanova's won 6 out of 7, and one of those wins were at Xavier. So I think they got the best chance But the question is do they still need to go ahead and win the championship game, or can they win a couple of more games against two teams go into the tournament and play and lose the championship game?
Well, they're playing good basketball, obviously, at the right time here. They kind of went into a little bit of a midseason funk, if you will. But remember, when Jay Wright retired, they didn't get a lot of love. But in fact, they were the number 16 team in the AP preseason poll coming into this year here. So there were a lot of basketball coaches that still respected this program, and now they've won their credit back for the way that they've closed. I made them the sleeper team inside of our playbook conference basketball tournament playbook basketball issue.
Okay.
Villanova. One, because you've got a lot of history, pedigree here. The fact that they've won 12 games in a row in this conference tournament here.
Oh, okay.
They do.
Wow.
They just do nothing but know how to win games.
What is that? 4 straight conference championships then? That's probably what it is? 12 in a row?
It's 3 out of 4, okay?
3 out of 4, okay.
3 out of 4, right, exactly. So one of those losses probably it could have been on the back end of all that. So, but they're playing some very, very good basketball, unquestionably here. But, and they're going to be a little bit of a price because they're not the number 1 seed coming into the tournament.
That's the good thing. Yeah, it should be. You should get a good value on them.
Yeah, Marquette's the number 1 seed coming into the tournament here.
They've got to be the 6th seed, so you should be able to get 10-1 on them at the worst.
Probably,
because you got 5 other teams. I mean, everybody can't be 5-1. I mean, maybe I don't know.
They're not going to let you steal anything because number 1, they're Villanova. Mm-hmm. And they've been there and done that. But I still think that they're worthy of a look here in this tournament here because of the name, the reputation, and the pedigree.
Yeah, I just don't want to buy on them if they're 6-1 or 5-1. I want 8 or 10-1 if I'm going to go that way. And the SEC, it looks like Alabama, A&M, Tennessee, Kentucky. I think Auburn's going to find a way to get in. Almost beating Alabama on their home court in overtime was a huge loss. I think they'll get in. The question is, does Missouri get in? Arkansas, terrible loss last time out. They need to get work done. Do you think they have what it takes? If you had a team that's not the top 4, Missouri, Auburn, if you think they're not in yet, Arkansas, and even Florida, which one of those teams would you take a chance on to win the championship overall?
You mean a team that's not Alabama, A&M, Kentucky, or Tennessee?
Yep.
I would say Missouri.
Okay.
A 22-win team. Arkansas's got some work to do. They've got 19 wins, 11 losses in the season here. But I also want to make this comment here. I think Auburn playing Alabama right down to the wire, losing in overtime. They could get some love here too, especially if they can win a couple of games. But I also think you're going to find Alabama's season going to hell in a handbag. Ever since that ugly incident has occurred, this basketball team has barely hung on by threads in games that they played. Barely hung on by threads. Yeah. You and I both lost a money line play that night we talked about them.
South Carolina,
and we got ringed by the referee in overtime in that game. It should have never, ever been like that, but it's protecting Alabama.
Yeah.
But how long can this basketball team continue to play down to the wire in overtime and keep winning basketball games? They've got the public soured on them. They've got the players looking and pointing fingers at each other here. They're going to be one of the early outs in the big March Madness tournament. You can mark my words. Alabama will go out in the first or second round of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that would not be surprising. I mean, they do look. They have a nice resume. There's no question. They have a superstar player. But yes, there is just and because who knows what is still going to happen. I mean, anything can happen in the next couple of weeks. With his status. And I don't like getting involved in those particular situations until you get all the facts. But yeah, it is kind of strange to me from what I know of why he wasn't at least sat out for a game or two, just so they can kind of sit back. And it was almost like, I don't know, to me, I'm not the mother of the child that died, and I don't know what kind of situation it was with the family, but I just can imagine that wouldn't go off very well if that was me. So,
if Brandon Miller had an agent right now, which he's not supposed to have because he's still in college, but he had somebody, his parents or somebody at least speaking for him, he should have at least stepped up and said, "Hey, I did something I should never have done. Didn't even consider it. I didn't obviously have any idea anything like this was going to happen, and I apologize if I was any part of the cause, which I indirectly didn't mean to be." But he's not.
Yes, like what you say, it's important to have the agent and the lawyer, who usually is the agent, because they're going to tell you what you should say, what you can say. That's not going to get you in trouble.
Right.
And there's something that he can say that's not going to get him in trouble.
Exactly.
But he's just not saying it.
But it needs to be said.
It needs to be said. Point. Yes.
It needs to be said.
Yeah.
It's a little bit disgraceful with what's going on in the world of college sports, and I don't want to get too far off the tangent here because we're talking the college basketball tournaments here. But we're putting out tomorrow on our win report at playbooksports.com. This is really, really interesting here. And you get the coffee club. It'll be in the coffee club. You'll read about it, okay? About how the headline is going to be the NIL, which everybody's all into now. And
yes.
Well, the NIL is now killing people. And if you take a look at what's going on with Georgia and was it Jalen, the football player?
Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter,
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what just so happens here, Greg? The car that he was driving was the car that was given to him in his NIL package from an Ohio car dealership. That's the car he got as part of the NIL package. You with me? If this NIL crap isn't there, we're not talking about it. We're not having this conversation here right now.
No, you're right. And I don't think that's going to be the last time we're going to hear about something like that.
No, I don't think so.
They're just kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's why an incident like this can hopefully begin to put a lid on this craziness of this NIL going on. That was my 2 seconds on the soapbox, and I just wanted to get that off my chest.
I will say this, and I hope, because I have heard this, this potential result of how it could actually benefit, and that is the fact that, and I think it's Joe Douglas. I was listening to his press conference at the Combine, and it was asked a question about it, and he believes that what's going to happen is that when players don't think that they're going to be taken in the first few rounds of the draft based on what they're being told, because of the NIL, they'll stay in school. So that, I hope, is at least something good that can come out of that, because anytime you can keep these kids in school for another year in either the NFL, college football, or definitely basketball, is the best for everybody involved. So
that's a good
I
point.
hope that happens.
A real good point. Yes.
And the last conference is the Big Ten. All I can say is that you're going to get 2 or 3 teams that are probably 8-1 or 12-1. You might just go ahead and just do those 3 teams, because anybody can win the Big Ten conference out of the top 8 or 9. They're all interchangeable. So all I can say is who's ever 8 and 10 and 12-1, just maybe put some money on those teams and just, do them all. So you have money on all 3 or 4 of them, and then maybe one of them will make a run.
Well, here you go. The number 1 seed, Purdue. Okay. What do they happen to be in this tournament? They've lost the money 9 times in a row in this tournament. 0-9 to the spread. You want to back that team? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. No. I think you've got to look at the old standby here, Michigan State. All of what Tom Izzo does. And whenever, here's another interesting tidbit about Izzo. If he plays somebody that beat him earlier in the season here, he's done it 5 times in this tournament. He's not lost the money in any of those basketball games.
Okay.
So look for anybody that took him out earlier, okay? Because he'll come and play. But I agree with you. It's wide open, this Big Ten. But more importantly, there's not a dominating team inside the Big Ten Conference. So
Purdue had it early in the season, and now that's all gone. So
yes, it is.
Now it's just about who's anybody's guess on what's going to happen. So that's why I said there's going to be a 4 teams that are going to give you good value, and the 2 teams that really need to make the runs are Penn State and Wisconsin. They're probably not in right now. So if you want to even go that route, just keep that in mind. And I think Penn State's got the firepower on offense to make a run, because they could score. So I would take a look at, but winning the whole thing, who knows? Could be a Northwestern, it could be an Illinois, like you said, could be a Michigan State, could even be a Rutgers or an Iowa. And if you can get 8 to 12-1 on those teams, take a chance.
Well, if you look at the Ken Pom ratings, and he's the basketball guru that a lot of everybody follows, with the analytical guy. His Big Ten numbers are weak. I think Purdue's his top ranked team, and they rank 29th in the country. Okay, so there's nobody in the Big Ten that he thinks is going to end up even creating a wave, if you will. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, teams can catch momentum and they can run, and the teams that do that are the teams that win 4 games in 4 days and go into the tournament and make a Connecticut type of run.
Well, look, that's and the thing is that this year in college basketball, as we said last week, is so wide open that if you're gonna have a down year, like there's no team that he believes is good enough to make a run. Well, you know what? This is the type of year when if you throw 9 Big Ten teams into the tournament, which I think might happen, sure, I think one of them might be able to make a run. And I agree with him. There's not a lot of talent there, but I've seen a lot stranger things happen, like St. Peter's last year.
Exactly right. You got all these teams. You mentioned 9 teams in the Big Ten. You think it's sacrilegious to have 9 teams come out of that conference, but those 9 teams are all knocking on 20 wins.
Yes,
this basketball season.
And by the way, next year, USC, UCLA.
Oh boy, there we go.
I mean, that's just nuts. I mean, they're going to have like 12 teams in the tournament starting next year. So,
well, the greatest analogy that I've come across so far is with UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten and Rutgers being in the Big Ten. That Rutgers is actually closer to Iceland than it is UCLA or Southern Cal.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
By the way, speaking of Rutgers, believe it or not, in the next 2 years, they are bringing in some major recruits. They've got a 5-star kid that's coming in by the name of Ace Bailey in 2 years that people say could be the top recruit in the country.
Wow.
So Steve Peichel is doing an amazing job with recruiting there. Next year, they got a 4-star kid. In 2 years, they're going to have a 5-star, a 4-star, and potentially another 4-star and maybe even another 5-star. So Rutgers is going to be a team to keep an eye on in the Big Ten in the next couple of years. So, all right. So that's going to wrap it up. Again, next week, Mark, we'll have a better picture of what's going on with these tournaments, and we'll definitely update them and talk about. We'll have all the odds available to us next week, that's for sure, because some of them haven't even started yet. And then the week after that, we'll preview the entire shebang. Can't wait for that as well. And also can't wait to talk to Jim Feist on not only this channel, but also your channel at playbookexperts.com. We're going to line him up. Loved his video that's available on your channel right now. It was a great video that talked about how to beat how to handicap the conference tournament. Yep,
yes,
it was a really great video. If anybody wants to know how to do that, make sure to check that out. So, Mark, appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next Thursday, I guess.
My pleasure as always, Greg. Be well, stay safe, and enjoy the games.